Hello, everybody. This is Omnixius, and I am the writer of Heather the Necromancer and the Dragon Knight Prophecy. I have made dozens of recordings over the past couple of weeks, and they've all been a struggle because there's so much I want to say, and the recordings end up bloating to just massive, hour-long sessions that I don't think anybody wants to listen to. And then I struggle to try to compact what I want to say down, and then it loses so much of its meaning, so much of its emphasis. So what I want to talk to you all about today, I just want to focus on my life and focus on my stories. I started writing my stories because my life really took a dark turn. It took a very negative turn, and the Dragon Knight Prophecy story, became my therapy. It became my way to vent some of my frustrations, a creative outlet for the problems going on in my life. And these problems just got worse and worse and worse, and they magnified and they built on top of each other. And it really began to take its toll on me. Now, when I started writing my stories, I entertained for a very brief moment that maybe, just maybe, I could get it published. And I had this dream of walking into a bookstore and seeing my book on a shelf. Now, I know that while I might be an okay storyteller, I'm not much of a writer. My English and grammar skills are terrible. I know that. And I would need an editor who was willing to work with me a great deal, who was willing to mark up my pages so that I could make revisions and, just hammer out all of my bugs and mistakes and help me learn and grow. I have been teaching myself grammar. I've been getting on, when Grammarly points out things that I'm doing wrong, I've been getting on Google and looking up what these things are that, I actually didn't know what a conjunction was. I was using them, but I didn't realize they were called conjunctions. And there's all sorts of English techniques, particularly in writing, that I just don't know and understand because I got through school by the skin of my teeth. English. I failed English almost every year of my life. And I got through a lot of it because my parents kept threatening to sue the school because I was acing everything else. So my parents' argument was, why is he acing math and science and all the really hard classes, but he's failing English? Why is this one class the problem? And I ended up being taken out of most English classes and being put in like a tiny classroom where it was just one teacher and 3 to 5 students, where it was just basic spell. It was the most basic bare bones English classes because those were the only ones I could pass. Now, the funny thing is I wrote little stories my whole life. I spent a lot of time writing stories. I love to tell stories. I just don't have what's the word I'm looking for here? You know how some people are really, really good at one thing, but they're really, really bad at it? It's like there's a trade-off. If you're really, really good at math, you're really, really awkward in social situations. You have some sort of a handicap in another area. Mine is English grammar. It just doesn't make any sense to me. The whole mechanics of how things are supposed to be put together doesn't make sense. Now, the fact that I have sentence and paragraph structure in my stories is a miracle. That's something I sat down even as I started writing. You may not realize this. Is like I wrote chapter 1 of my story, and then of the Dragon Knight, and then I went through and ran it through Grammarly, and Grammarly picked it apart. There's just hundreds and hundreds of errors. And I spent weeks going through that, teaching myself these things until I got to the point where I could pass a chapter through Grammarly and have it only find like 23 errors, I had to teach myself all this. And even so, I find myself where I'll have learned something, but then I'll start using it wrong again a week later. I just fall back on the old methods. But anyway, getting back on focus. The stories were my outlet. The Dragon Knight Prophecy was my outlet. And because of the Dragon Knight Prophecy, because I wanted to get it published, and I couldn't, I sent it out to hundreds of agents and nobody would touch it, I ended up putting it on Royal Road. And Royal Road, it suddenly got feedback. It got a bit of a following, and it was not being able to get this story published that allowed me to discover Royal Road, and it was coming to Royal Road that allowed me to discover the literary RPG genre, which I had no idea even existed. Now, I love role-playing games. I love Dungeons and Dragons, and I played... let me correct this. I dungeon mastered a lot of Dungeons and Dragons. I much preferred to be the dungeon master, because that's the person who tells the story. And I wrote the stories for my groups, and I had a lot of very big, long-running groups because people loved going through my adventures because they were plotty and full of story and characters. I would spend hours fleshing out characters, important people, and locations, writing histories and scenes. And then my players would ruin it all. They'd kill an important character or just ignore a scene, or they would never follow my stories. But still, it was a good creative learning experience as far as storytelling went. But I discovered these literary RPGs, and I thought, I play a lot of RPG video games, and I played Dungeons and Dragons. I wonder if I could write one of these. And I dabbled in it a lot, over and over again. But ultimately, I settled on one story that I was only going to write a few chapters of. I figured I'll write these, I'll throw them up, I'll get all the negative feedback from people about how bad that it is. And then I'll use that as a learning process to write another story. And that was Heather the Necromancer. But it got a lot of positive feedback and it exploded. It grew at a rate so much faster than the Dragon Knight. The Dragon Knight had already been up there for half a year. And in the course of a month, Heather caught up to it and passed it in almost every category. And it started getting me Patreon followers. And all this other stuff started happening because of Heather. So I decided I had to keep going with it. I had to keep running with it. The problem, of course, was I never sat down to flesh out a full story arc for Heather. I was just kind of winging it. I was letting my imagination run wild, and I was letting the story kind of evolve, but I didn't really have a good idea what I wanted to do with this world. With the Dragon Knight Prophecy, I don't have an outline or notes or anything for the Dragon Knight Prophecy. I sat down one day and I started writing. And I just let it flow out. And that whole story is literally just flowing out of me. You would be amazed at how much I cut out of that story because I see those characters' day-to-day lives. I see that they're all the mundane little things that they do in their lives. Gersius shaving and Thale brushing Lily's hair. I live and breathe that story as if it was real. And thus it's very easy for me to write. It's actually harder for me to write concise chapters of that story because I see so much detail and I see so much of what's going on that I can't write 50,000 word chapters, which is what I want to write. So I have to struggle to take things out of the Dragon Knight Prophecy. With Heather, it's a completely different animal. Heather was an experiment. It was me trying to grow in a new direction. It wasn't part of my therapy. It isn't tied to my emotions. It's a mechanical process, Heather. And because I didn't expect her to take off and become successful, I wasn't prepared for it. So all the chapters you have of Heather are me scrambling to write chapters in some sort of coherent idea and kind of, I hadn't fleshed who I really wanted Heather to be or how I wanted anything to work. I hadn't fleshed any of that out. So when I finished book 2, I thought, I'm going to take a step back and I'm going to flesh out Heather's world. I'm going to figure out why she's here. Why is she chosen? Because I don't know that. I didn't know anything about that. Who is Heather really? What is her purpose? What's going on? What are the Necromancer Kings all about? I sat down and I tried to figure all that out. And what kept happening is I would write 2, 3, 4 chapters of book 3, and I always ended up going down a very dark path. I started going down this... How do I explain this? When we're dealing with the characters from the Dragon Knight Prophecy, that story is very... it's a fantasy story, but the characters are very real. They respond to things the way a person might actually respond to them in. Whereas Heather's story is more silly and the world is more fantastic. So a more human response isn't necessarily the right response. The problem I have with that is even when I played Dungeons and Dragons and I dungeon mastered, I wrote very serious stories. I'm I'm very good at writing very deadly serious characters. I'm not very good at writing this more lighthearted, fun character that's Heather. And in order to do that, I have to kind of step back from myself and just sort of be silly. The problem is that doesn't tend to lead to coherent stories. So when I sat down to write book 3, I kept going down this really dark path where Heather was becoming sort of bitter. She was embittered. She was angry that she was here. She was really beginning to dwell on the fact that she feels like she's a prisoner in this world and that her true enemy is the visitors, is the people who imprisoned her here. This whole place is her prison, and she's been locked into it against her will, and her whole focus and goal is to get out. I want out of this prison. And that's where all my stories kept going. And I'd write 2, 3, 4 chapters of it, and then I'd push it aside and I'd go like, this is such a jarring shift of tone. You know, I just jumped out of like a My Little Ponies episode, and now we're in Hellraiser. You know, it's like, you know, now Heather's killing people, and you know, violence is happening, and all sorts of these terrible things are going on because we have a Heather who's becoming sort of vindictive and vengeful. She's responding to the pressure that she feels. It's more realistic, but it's a jarring shift of tone. So I have been searching for a middle ground. I've been searching for a way to write that lighthearted story still, to keep the sort of the fun and bounce in it, while still addressing some of the realities of the situation. She is a prisoner. She is trapped there, and she doesn't want to be there. And she's going to miss things. She's going to miss her family. She's going to miss holidays. She's going to miss being able to curl up on the couch with takeout food and watch the kinds of movies she likes to watch. She's going to miss her social media. She's going to miss all the things that make our modern world. Heather is somebody who's very well embraced and ingratiated in that. People like Frank and Quinny, they chose to leave all that behind. So for them, there isn't the same level of detachment and isolation. But for Heather, that was all ripped away from her. You know, she went from living in a high technology society to living in, for her, the Stone Age. And it doesn't matter that there's magic and all these other things going on. It isn't what she wants. She had the life she wanted. She worked hard to achieve it and to get there, and it was taken from her. That should have an effect on her. It should. And every time I kept sitting down to write it, I kept writing the logical outcome of that effect, and that resulted in a very unhappy Heather. So I've been having this struggle, and I've been beating my head against the wall, because I can write the Dragon Knight in my sleep. I have thousands upon thousands of pages of the Dragon Knight already written. I have books of the Dragon Knight that will come after the Dragon Knight series. I have the books that come after that. I have some of them already written, because the story is so... I live and breathe it so much that I can just sit down, put my hands on the keyboard, and just start writing out scenes, and they just flow like water. Over a waterfall. It's amazing how easy it is for me to write that story. But then I sit down to write Heather, and I end up staring at the keyboard for 45 minutes going, what am I going to write? What would she do here? Why would she do it? But why I'm making this recording is, my life, all of this writing and all of this path that I'm on started because my life took a very, very terrible series of falls. Basically, my wife nearly died. In the process of my wife nearly dying, both of my dogs did die. I had multiple streams of income. All of those income streams collapsed. They all collapsed within like 2 months' time. Every source of income failed. It just stopped coming in for various reasons. It would take me another hour to explain it all. And I started living on credit cards. I started paying all my bills with credit cards and paying, because we had run into financial trouble. I tried to save money. And what I did is I canceled our medical insurance. I canceled our insurance. I canceled our homeowner's insurance because we own the house. But then the wife got sick and ended up in the hospital. I don't have insurance anymore. I canceled it all to save money. I gambled and I lost. I lost big. And you know, ultimately it got to a point where the pressure was starting to eat away at me so much that, you know, I made that plea online for donations for Patreon support. And I can't explain to you all, that was my lowest point. I was ashamed of myself for that. I hated myself for doing that. I hate it when YouTubers, you know, get on their soapbox and start saying, well, you guys need to step up and start donating and this and that. You know, none of you ever need to donate to me, okay? You never do. All right? If you have the means and you want to and you feel compelled to, by all means, please go ahead, and I greatly appreciate it. But, you know, just reading the story and making that little comment on Royal Road and saying I liked this, or pointing out what you might not have liked and how I might have been able to do it better, you know, giving me that criticism, that encouraging criticism, that's every bit as good as money, you know, because I am a struggling writer. I am somebody who's trying to learn how to do this, and I want to get better at it. But getting to the point where I had to essentially beg for money, that hurt. That really, really hurt. And it's a big reason why I've been silent, why I haven't done any recordings, why I haven't really spoken in the comment section. I kind of feel ashamed that I did it. And ultimately, the wife's family stepped in and bailed us out. I never reached my donation goal, but her family bailed us out. And then my father stepped in and bailed us out even more. And over the course of the next few months, things actually started to get better. Some stability has returned to our lives. Some things have gone our way. And for the first time in a long time, an income stream is paying again. It took a lot of effort to get it going again, but it is paying again. And that gives me some breathing room. It's given me a lot of breathing room. Now, I'm massively in debt in my credit cards, and I have medical bills piled up to the ceiling, but I have enough of an income where I'm just crawling over the edge of breaking even. And if I can restore a few more of my income streams, then I'll get ahead and I'll start to be able to pay some of that debt down. I was actually thinking about filing for bankruptcy not too long ago. I was, you know, I've reached a point where I had no flexibility. I had no money. You know, I was wondering how I was going to pay the power bill. I was wondering, you know, and you know, on top of it all, my computer decides it wants to start breaking. 2 of my video cards failed. The video card that I had in it, you know, my nice one, it blew up. I replaced it with an older card that then blew up a week later, and I ended up having to dig an old card out of a computer, you know, that I had years ago that was still sitting in the closet. And it's in there, and I can type with it, but I can't even play some of the most basic of games. Even Minecraft overtaxes it a lot. I have to lower all the settings on Minecraft just to play it, and it's a sad situation. But things are improving, and the whole reason I'm making this recording is over the past few days, I had a bit of an epiphany about Heather. I have been dwelling on Heather every single day, trying to write test chapters, trying to write a storyline, trying to link all the things that I've already written about in Heather together to make a cohesive picture so I understand the why of the world. Why is Heather there? What is her purpose? What journey is she about to go on? Where is this story going? You know, what is the goal? What is the end goal, the final outcome? And because I know if I know that, then I know what path she's on, and I know I can write my silly chapters where she does specific things in a chapter, but I can slowly begin to steer her towards this ultimate destiny. And for the longest time, I really didn't know what that was. I was, you know, I had all these concepts that, well, it has to do with the Necromancer Kings, but I don't even know what they did. I was just making that up as I went. I had an epiphany the other day, and I sat down and I wrote myself out a little 2-page thing about the whole concept of the visitors and the world and the nature of things, and I began to realize that it all fit into place. It explains what the Necromancer Kings were up to, what the visitors are up to, what's everything in the world, the reason why everything is the way it is, it's all there. And I suddenly have this clear picture of all this stuff. And then I went the extra mile of sitting down and writing up a complete character bio of Heather. Who is Heather? What does she look like? What does she like to eat? What's her favorite ice cream? Everything that I can think of that I know about Heather. What is her career? What did she go to school for? Did she have any crushes? All the little personal details I can come up with. Now, I have been warned never to release any of this. That people would prefer Heather to be more of a blank slate so that they find her easier to project themselves on. The more I define her, the harder it is for people to do that. So in the story, I think I'm going to keep that up. Heather as more of a blank slate character. But for my sake, writing the story, I now know who Heather is. And I sat down yesterday and wrote almost 12,000 words of a story. The opening, instead of trying to break it into logical chapters, I just started writing. And I wrote all these words, and then I sat down today and I tried to rehash it and refine it. And I realized I had all these chapters and it was going in a direction I liked. There were some serious scenes in there where Heather is dealing with the problems of her being more or less a prisoner in this world. But those moments are happening logically, and they're short and they're brief and they're not detracting from the overall lightheartedness of the story. Other than, it's giving it that tone of realness. Heather is a real human being with real problems and concerns and real emotions. She's in this world. She keeps trying to steer herself back on the point of, I have to make the most of what I have here. I wrote all that and I'm very happy with it. And I'm going to start... I have to go through the editing process now, but I honestly think that I have a good direction to move forward in now. I understand why the world is the way it is, and it literally comes down to how quickly I want to get to a resolution. I can write thousands of stories now based around Heather, because unlike the Dragon Knight has to happen in a specific timeline. The main character, Gersius, is on a mission. He's trying to accomplish something, and there is a very real time limit on what he's trying to do. Heather doesn't have a time limit. Heather now has to go through a process of exploration where she learns more and more about the world and about what happened so that she becomes more aware of what she wants to do. And I can do that 1,000 ways, and I can do that over 1,000 chapters. And it takes such a burden off of me now because going down the dark path I was going down was making me not like Heather. It was making me hate the story. Every time I wrote it, I felt like one half of my mind was like, well, this is how it would logically happen. But the other half of my mind was saying, yeah, maybe that's true, but this isn't Heather the Necromancer anymore. This is a completely different story you're writing. The character may be named Heather, but this is a very dark, gritty, story. This is a completely different story. You can't use this. I put a chapter 1 of the lightest version of that I had come up with already. I put that on Patreon for people to read, and there were people asking questions like, "Well, okay, this is a story, but it's strange. It's not like the other ones." So that chapter, I think, is going to come down, and I'm going to replace it with a better chapter 1 for book 3. But anyway, I just wanted to make this recording. I so much want to interact with my community. I so much want to talk to my community. And, part of my computer problems, unfortunately, like I set up a Discord server, but because I'm down on such a low-grade video card now, when I open Discord, and it opens all the little windows, it causes my computer to crash. Sometimes it'll open and it'll run for a minute or two, but ultimately it blue screens and the whole computer crashes, and then it has to reboot. So what I was doing before was I was opening Discord and putting it in another monitor, and I was writing in the other one, because I have 2 monitors in the computer. I can't do that anymore. My computer literally won't run Discord. So I am severed from one of the main ways in which I communicate with my audience. And this whole process has been a pain in the ass. Okay. It has really been a struggle. And all the pressures and all the problems going on in my life, there's the shortages of money and all these things, with the wife nearly dying, all the dogs dying. My house is falling apart because I don't have any money to make the repairs. All of those things were adding up to making me, I was on just the ragged edge of my emotions. And, anytime anybody posted anything on Royal Road that was maybe not as polite as it could have been, or maybe, even if they were trying to be polite, but they were criticizing my writing technique, which they're perfectly right to do. My writing technique is weak. It needs a lot of improvement. There's a lot of errors in there still. There's a lot of things that I could do to improve it. I admit it. But because my emotions were running so high, I was reading those things and I wanted to lash. I wanted to lash out and just tear into people because I needed that. I needed to vent. You know what I mean? So I ultimately just threw my hands up and I said, you know what? No replies is better than that kind of a reply. Do not lash back at these people. They're just being honest and they're not wrong. So you can't lash at them. So I stepped back. I stopped replying to a lot of comments. I read most of them. There were some instances where there were so many comments. I'd go again and there'd be 30 new comments. I would read through the first 10 to 15 of them. And if there were too many people in there that were being a little critical and I started to get emotional, I had to just shut it off. It's okay, stop. Don't read anymore. If you're getting to that point, don't read anymore. So I apologize to some of you that I haven't read your comments. But I had to have that separation. And I so badly want the Discord, but that's not going to happen until I improve my computer condition. The fan on my processor stopped running and the computer started to overheat. I have this jury-rigged processor fan now with zip ties holding it on. I stole the fan from another computer. Everything that could go wrong has gone wrong in my life. Everything that can go wrong. It's absolutely amazing how many things have gone wrong. But you know what? I'll get through it. I will endure. And all of these things are what led me down the path of writing. If these things hadn't happened, I wouldn't have started writing. And the writing has made me aware that I actually love doing this. I love writing. And I don't want to just write Heather from a mechanical point of view. I don't want to just churn out chapters for the sake of churning out chapters. I want to try to build a more cohesive story. I want to try to build a more cohesive world. And I realized that I could have book 3 done by now. I could have just written out more unconnected nonsense sort of chapters with maybe a couple chapters here and there that were connected in one larger arc. I could have done that. But I thought, no, I want to achieve something better. I want to start Heather down a larger arc. And I want, there are still going to be one-off chapters that don't deal with the larger arc, but I want overall the books to be a whole book to advance the larger arc to some degree. And now I understand what I want to do with that. I'm going to push forward with Heather. And I apologize to those of you who've been waiting for chapters for eons. Because it's been a long time since I posted one. But I was not in the right headspace to do this. And I was ashamed that I had asked for money from my readers. Listen, I would love writing to be my career now. I would love it to be my job to sit at my desk and write. I love writing now. But I need to take classes. I've looked in the local college to see if there are maybe some adult English classes I can take that are basic English, but for adults, for people like me who really didn't get it the first time around. And then I'd love to take some of those classes. And then once I'm through that level, I'd like to take a creative writing class. Something that will teach me specifically how to write the way a story should be written. I can tell the story. I know what I want to communicate. I would love for somebody to teach me how to structure that communication so it reads the right way. I'm doing okay. I hope I am, but I feel like I can be so much better. And some of the people in the comments have pointed that out. They've said, you've told the story, but you could have done it so much better. If that's the case, then I want to know how. I would love to know how to do it better. So anyway, somehow I managed to go 30 minutes. I shaved this down by half. That's what's going on. Heather chapters are hopefully coming soon, provided nothing else goes wrong in my life. And I'm really excited about releasing the next chapters. I really, really am. I've finished the most recent Dragonite book, and I've decided I'm not going to pick up the next chapters of the Dragonite book till I have Heather's whole next book written. That way I'm focused on one story and I'm not flipping back and forth. And I may go this route from now on. I might, write all of Heather, and then once I have all of Heather written, I'll start editing her chapters and releasing them. And then most of the Dragonite books are written. Then I can go and clean up the Dragonite books and get that one done while I'm releasing Heather chapters, and then start releasing the Dragonite ones. That way I'm only really working on one book at a time. I'm not trying to be creative in two completely different directions at once and while under an immense amount of pressure. Anyway, I'm going to cut this off here because it's going too long. Anyway, thank you all for your support. Thank you all, even for your criticisms, even for your, when you point out my mistakes and my errors. I'm sorry. There's some of you I've looked on there where you've pointed out something, and then I do it in the next chapter, and you point it out again, and you point it out again. A lot of that is because I'm so emotional and so frustrated. I wasn't reading far enough down the comments, or I was getting to your comments and I was getting aggravated, and that's on me, But, I'm going to give myself a pass because of just how much stress I've been under. I'm going to do everything I can to get my hands on a new computer or a video card. I want my Discord up and running. I'm cut off. I set up a Discord, I'm building a community, and I'm cut off from it. My websites are down because I couldn't afford to keep them running. It's a mess. It's all a mess. Anyway, I'm going to cut this off. Thank you all for your help. Thank you all for reading my story. I am going to do everything I can to get plugged back in and create a space where the community is building again, because I still want to write. This is what I want to do. I love doing this, and I want to write both of these stories. And I have an amazing set, I have an amazing world, a stage for Heather to run around in. Now I'm excited to write stories in it, not because I understand what's going on. I understand what's going to happen. And now I want to get to those points because I have a level of excitement. And that's really going to change things, I hope. Anyway, thank you all again. I keep getting to this thank you point, never finishing. Thank you, and I will catch you in the next one. Bye.